Hatton Garden is located in the heart of London. Dozens of jewelry stores and workshops are concentrated here. Salespeople and artisans work in them, offering handmade items and unique jewelry. The area has about 60 independent businesses that specialize in diamond products. It is here that most of the jewelry trade in the UK takes place. The robbery was planned by experienced criminals, many of whom had been involved in robberies for decades. The group was led by Brian Reeder, who was over 70 years old. He saw this as the last and most important job of his life. Reeder assembled a team of equally experienced criminals. The target was a bank vault in Hatton Garden. The British knew that millions of dollars worth of jewelry were stored there. It took several months to plan the operation. The gang carefully studied the surroundings, identifying weaknesses in the security system and looking for ways to break in. They pretended to be locals in order to study the layout of the building and the location of the cameras. The key part of the plan was to drill through a concrete wall about 50 centimeters thick. To do this, the robbers needed special tools, like industrial drills. They decided to carry out the robbery in April, during Easter, because at that time all institutions were closed for the holiday period. The criminals knew that from Thursday to Tuesday there would be no one in the vault, so everything should go smoothly. They also hoped to easily bypass the security system to prevent the alarm from going off. Each participant performed their own role. Brian Reeder was the main organizer and was responsible for planning the operation. Terry Perkins was responsible for logistics and coordinating actions during the robbery. John Collins was also responsible for managing the team, including its movement and safety. Carl Wood did the most difficult job. He had to drill a hole in the wall to get to the bank vaults. A total of 7 people participated in the robbery. A white van with no identifying marks pulls up to an office building on Hatton Garden. Inside are 7 men disguised as workers. They are wearing helmets, bright protective vests, and construction gloves. They looked like ordinary repairmen, which allowed them to walk calmly through the busy streets of London without raising any unnecessary questions. Using fake keys, the criminals broke open the front door, simultaneously covering up the evidence. They entered the building and descended the elevator shaft to the basement, where the armored vault was located. Hidden behind concrete walls and steel doors are millions of euros worth of jewelry belonging to wealthy Englishmen. The vaults contain jewelry, gold bars, and large sums of cash. The robbers discover the distribution panel that controls the alarm and video surveillance systems. They disable the system, leaving the premises unattended. However, the alarm goes off and sends a notification to the security company. The operator checks the message, but after a quick analysis decides that the signal is false, thinking that a technical failure has occurred. The operator's mistake proved fatal and allowed the group to continue their operation. Once at the vault, the robbers take an industrial drill and begin drilling. The criminals hope that the hole they have made will allow them to crawl through to the safe deposit boxes and carry out the loot. The gang works slowly and carefully, trying not to make any unnecessary noise. After several hours of intense work, the equipment begins to malfunction. The drill jams and the robbers are unable to achieve the desired result. The wall proves to be stronger than expected, and the tools themselves are unreliable. The criminals are forced to interrupt the operation and go home, leaving some of the equipment behind. Realizing that more resources will be needed to succeed, the group decides to prepare more thoroughly for the next attempt. Armed with new equipment, including an improved drill and construction tools, the criminals return to the vault. This time, they have thought through every step and prepared spare drills. The robbers realize that time is running out to complete the operation, so they decide to act quickly. After several hours of drilling, the drill finally pierces the desired hole. Its diameter is small, but sufficient to penetrate the vault. The robbers crawl through the narrow opening one by one. Inside are hundreds of compartments, each containing jewelry worth tens of thousands of euros. Once they reach the vault, the criminals begin breaking in. They have hydraulic jacks in their arsenal, which allow them to break into even the most secure lockers. They take their time and break into one locker after another. From there, each of them takes out expensive jewelry and large sums of cash. They put everything into bags. After completing the break-in, the robbers estimated that the total amount stolen could be more than 10 million euros. Despite the huge volume, they managed to place the jewels in bags so that they could be quickly loaded into the van. After making sure that all the equipment had been collected and no traces left behind, the criminals left the building. They left as quietly as they had arrived, using trash cans to dispose of the bags. It was early morning at the time, so the streets of London were empty. The robbers loaded the loot into the van and fled the scene of the crime. The robbery was discovered on April 7, when employees returned to work and decided to check the vault. A large-scale investigation soon began. Police arrived at the scene and began their investigation. The wall had been broken through, some of the safes were hidden, and the jewelry had been stolen. Investigators thoroughly searched the premises, collecting evidence that could provide even the slightest clue. They immediately found a hole in the wall through which the robbers had entered the vault. Detectives studied possible escape routes, trying to understand how they managed to bypass the security system without triggering the alarm. In the end, the investigation revealed that the alarm in the vault did go off, but the alarm was ignored by the security guards. After questioning, it became clear that the operators considered the signal to be false and did not perceive it as a real threat. The company was criticized, and after the incident, the government revised its security standards. The investigation continued, and with the help of CCTV cameras, it was possible to see parts of the faces of some of the robbers. The recordings became the main piece of evidence, indicating that the group consisted of elderly people. This came as a surprise to investigators, as they were used to such robberies being committed by young people. The most important stage began when the police discovered that a few days before the robbery, a white van had been near the vault. This van was spotted on cameras near the entrance to the vault. Although the license plate numbers were hidden, this helped to form a picture of the robbers. A special task force was soon formed, all available information was studied, and it was decided to bring in analysts. The task was to find out in which direction the criminals had fled. The police began to track down connections that could shed light on the identity of each member of the gang. Soon, investigators had hundreds of recordings and photographs on their desks. One of the robbers, unaware that his phone was being tapped, began discussing the details of the robbery with an acquaintance. This allowed the police to gather enough information to draw up a plan of action for each member. The recordings contained information that could only be known to those who were directly involved in the robbery. As soon as the police identified the suspects, they placed them under close surveillance. Detectives tracked the gang's movements and reviewed their correspondence. One of the most important leads was the surveillance of Daniel Johnson. He often returned to the hideout where some of the stolen items were stored. The police were concerned that the gang could disappear at any moment, so the officers had to take active measures. In early May, agents conducted a series of coordinated raids. They arrested Brian Reeder, Terry Perkins, John Collins, and Carl Wood. During the operations, stolen jewelry was seized, although most of it was never found. Evidence found in the suspects' homes confirmed their involvement in the robbery. Among the items found were jewelry and tools used in the break-in. Over time, some members of the gang, including Daniel Johnson, began cooperating with the police and revealed where they had hidden part of the loot. However, others, such as Brian Reeder, remained silent, despite the irrefutable evidence of their guilt. In January 2016, the jury delivered its verdict. The main defendants, Brian Reeder, Terry Perkins, John Collins, and Daniel Jones, were found guilty of conspiracy to commit robbery and sentenced to long prison terms. Their criminal pasts played a big part in this decision. Brian Reeder, who planned the robbery, was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Many considered this punishment equivalent to life imprisonment, given his age and health. Terry Perkins and Daniel Jones received 7 years in prison, as did 75-year-old John Collins. Carl Wood, who did heavy physical labor, was sentenced to 6 years, while Hugh Doyle received a suspended sentence for his minor role in the crime. After the initial sentences were handed down, it became clear that a large portion of the stolen goods had not been returned. British law allows for harsher punishment if criminals do not return the stolen goods, which became the basis for further proceedings. In 2018, the court ruled that each participant must return an amount proportional to their share of the stolen goods. This decision took into account that the robbers had property with which they could pay. The judge warned that if the defendants did not return the property, their prison terms would be increased. Many of the robbers did not comply with the requirements, so they were given an additional 7 years in prison. Now one of the unsolved mysteries is the fate of the stolen jewels. Among them were diamonds and rare stones, which made up most of the loot. Such items can be sold for huge sums of money on the black market, but their sale is associated with numerous difficulties. As a rule, such items have serial numbers and certificates, which makes their further sale difficult. After the robbery, the police put forward many theories about where the jewels might have disappeared to, but the search still yielded no results. Everything changed when the police managed to arrest the gang leader. Brian Reeder claimed that some of the stolen items had been sold off before the arrest. They ended up on the black market in London. During the investigation, it was discovered that the criminals had established contacts with dealers in advance, which allowed them to quickly sell the stolen goods. Nevertheless, the process of selling such valuable items has always been fraught with high risks. Buyers feared surveillance by law enforcement agencies, so the criminals developed a whole plan to hide the jewels. The robbers used trusted individuals and front companies. This scheme allowed them to quickly sell some of the stones on the black market and avoid direct contact with buyers. Thanks to these measures, the group managed to sell a large number of jewels before the police raids began. Later, the investigation began a large-scale investigation and search for possible buyers. However, as it turned out, after passing through many hands, the stones gradually lost their identity. Some of them were remade and sold under different names. At the same time, the transfer was often accompanied by the preparation of fake documentation. All this greatly complicated the work of the police. After questioning, detectives found out that the criminals used various schemes to store the loot. For example, John Collins hid jewelry in his personal hiding places. During a search of his apartment, only a small portion of the stolen goods was found. This meant that the rest of the items had either been sold or very well hidden. It is believed that the other robbers followed the same pattern. As a result, most of the jewels remain stolen. Many diamonds and rare stones have probably ended up in the hands of private collectors. They will be stored there for years before reappearing on the market. Investigators also do not rule out that a large part of the property may have been taken out of the UK. However, the lost jewels did not help the robbers escape justice. This is how the famous Hatton Garden robbery ended. If you enjoyed watching this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.